that you are here. I just want to kind of give us a little talk about, this is what we call a wind quintet. And can anybody raise their hand and tell me why it's called a quintet? Does anybody know? Go ahead. Okay, well, it's called a quintet. You're very close because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. Okay, so quintet means a group of 5. It's called a wind quintet because, yes?
There are 5 woodwinds.
Because, right, there are 5 of us and we are all wind instruments. Now, actually, there are 4 of us are woodwind instruments, and then we have 1 player that's a member of the brass. But the brass is also a wind instrument because you do what? To make the sound, right? You blow into it to make the sound. So we are all wind instruments in this group. Right, so anyway, so that's, we're going to introduce all the different instruments individually. We all happen to be members of the Fort Worth Symphony, and so this is what we do for a living. How many of you have parents that get up every morning and go to work? Yeah. Well, that's what we do. We get up every day and we put our instruments together and we start practicing and playing concerts for folks like you. So we're glad that you could be here with us today. We're going to talk a little bit about music and animals. And maybe you're a little confused as to how music and animals are connected. But, you know, we often talk about how music makes us feel something. You know, sometimes we'll listen to music and it makes us feel happy. Or we talk about music and it makes us feel sad. But we can also use music to draw a picture with music. And so we're going to sort of talk about how we can have different animals and how those animals can be represented in music. So this next piece that I want you to listen to, I want you to listen and I want you to look at these pictures over here. And I want you to listen and guess quietly, I'll ask you afterward, which animal do you think the music that we play, it represents? Sounded exactly like a parrot. Raise your hand if you thought it sounded like the panda bears. All right, raise your hand if you thought it sounded like a bee. Very good, very good. So see how we can use music and yet it can paint a picture exactly of like an animal, in this case of a bee. We're going to now take a look at the flute. Miss Pam's going to show us the flute and talk about it a little bit.
Well, the flute is probably one of the oldest of all the woodwind instruments.
Used to be, they would just go out and they would just cut a piece of grass or a reed, a tube, and that's what the flute is. It's a tube. So the end of it is plugged. This part is open, but it's just one long tube, and you have this little hole right here that you blow the air across. So some of the air goes in the tube and spins and makes the sound, and a lot of the air just goes out into space. And then you have these little holes with keys that close and change the pitch. So the more keys that you add and close, the lower the pitch goes. Now it can play fairly low, and it can play high. We play a lot of bird music on flute. I saw you raise your hand. Do you know what that's from?
Yes.
Tell me.
Peter
and the Wolf by Prokofiev. He plays the bird. Now you also heard the piccolo. Now the piccolo is just like the flute in how it's constructed. It's a tube. The end is closed and one end is open, and it has keys. Has a little hole that you blow across. But it's a little bit different in that it plays in a different range. So it's pretty high. So the smaller the instrument, the higher it goes. We play also a lot of patriotic music. Maybe you know Yankee Doodle?
Yes.
So that's the piccolo.
I can play it on the piano.
Can you? All right.
I'm gonna sing it on
Okay, so this next piece actually features the piccolo, and it's called The Whistler and His Dog. And I want you to imagine a gentleman coming home from work, and he needs to walk his dog, and he is going to whistle while he walks his dog.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my instrument, which is a brass instrument, the horn. Who knows, who can guess how I make sound on this?
You blow into the tube right there.
That's not all. What do you think?
You blow it in and like take that thing. Do that.
These? Now what else happens?
You blow on it and then you press the keys.
That's what I just did. There has to be vibration to make sound. Now, what do you think is vibrating? Yep. Whatever. Yes, I'm going like this. You don't believe me?
I
And now the reason my hand is also in the bell, and that comes from the old days when there wasn't any of this middle tubing or these valves or keys, and you could only get certain notes. And what they would do is they would use their hand to fill in the missing notes of the scales. And the valves let me do that without having to use my hands. So that's the horn.
I have a question.
You do.
So how long is that horn? If you were gonna take all, it looks to me like all that tubing is all wrapped up and swirled around.
If you put it all end to end, it might be about 12 feet long.
Whoa.
So the horn can go pretty low, but also pretty high.
Wow.
So this next piece we're going to play for you actually features the horn. The horn is a very sort of regal instrument. It has a beautiful sound. And so the animal that we are going to represent is perhaps an equally regal animal, which is our national bird. Can anybody tell me what our national bird is? Yes.
Parrot.
The bald eagle. Exactly. That's funny. So I actually have a real life-sized picture of a bald eagle over here. So if you can imagine a bird with wings that wide soaring in the sky while we play this piece. So my instrument is next. Sorry, I have to sit down and play, so you have to have a contraption to play standing up. So this is a rather funny looking instrument. Yeah, honey, it's true. And this is called a bassoon. And the bassoon is the largest of all of the woodwind instruments. So because it's the largest, do you think I play the highest? Raise your hand if you think I play the highest of all the woodwind instruments. Or raise your hand if you think I play the lowest of all the woodwind instruments. Very good, very good. So the bigger the instrument, the lower the sound. Yes, go ahead.
My music teacher told me a bassoon was very
A bassoon is very low. You are absolutely right. So let me just start out by playing for you. I'm going to start on one of my highest notes, and I'll play all the way down to my lowest note so you can hear how low I can go. Pretty low, huh? Yeah. So the bassoon is what we call a double reed instrument. And that's because I don't really have a mouthpiece. I have when Aaron was talking about the vibrations, to make the vibrations to create a sound for bassoon, I make this reed. This is 2 pieces of wood that's been tied together. And when you blow through it, the blades sort of vibrate against each other to make kind of a funny sound.
Doesn't it tickle your lips so much?
No, and it doesn't tickle my lips. It's a funny question. I mean, maybe at the beginning it did. But putting it on the bassoon, it sounds a whole lot better. Now the bassoon is like the horn. This has actually been folded in half. So the bassoon is 9 feet of tubing, so taller than most of us here. So we fold it in half, so it's actually manageable. The bassoon is often called the clown of the orchestra. It usually is when they have a silly character in a story, the bassoon represents that person. Or in the famous story Peter and the Wolf, the bassoon represents the grumpy grandpa. So I'm going to play that, and I want to see if you think it sounds like a grumpy grandpa. Grumpy, huh? Yeah. Okay, so here, let me change my signs. This next piece that we're going to play for you, I want you to guess again. The bassoon is going to have this solo, and I want you to listen to the bassoon and guess which instrument the bassoon represents. Was a fish. Sue played a fish. How about a lion? How about the elephant?
Elephant.
Oh, right. Right on. The big elephant was the bassoon. Very good.
Bassoon.
This is the clarinet. I produce the sound with this little reed. Without this, no sound. Then I put this on the mouthpiece of the clarinet. And the vibration of the reed produces the sound. The clarinet can play really low or can play really high. The clarinet can play really forte, really loud. It can play really soft. The clarinet in the, who knows in Peter and the Wolf, what's the clarinet? These are things that I can't reach those holes. There are holes. I can't reach those holes with my hands. So those keys help me out reaching the holes. Okay?
So we're going to play another piece. Oh, sorry.
In our past last year, in our music teacher, she gave us a little sheet to cover, and it was the cat, Peter, the wolf.
Yeah, and Grandpa, right? Grumpy.
And the bird.
Everything.
Right. So this next piece is another cat piece. It's not from Peter and the Wolf. It's another cat piece. But something happens, just like Peter and the Wolf. The cat climbs up a tree. So I want you to listen for the clarinet to climb up a tree.
The only instrument you haven't heard about is, does anybody know what this is called? Right here?
Oboe.
The oboe, that's right. The oboe looks like a clarinet. It's made out of the same wood as the clarinet, but it has a double reed, just like the bassoon has. So just like the other instruments, if I blow air into this oboe without the reed, what's it going to sound like? Not much. But if I blow into the reed, it makes a funny sound by itself. But I can put it on the oboe, and you can make beautiful sounds with it. Now the oboe comes from a pretty old instrument. You might see some, I don't know, funny cartoons or pictures of people who do this. Right? But it's kind of evolved over time, and we've added a lot of keys to it and a lot of sophistication. And can anybody tell me what animal it represents in Peter and the Wolf?
The duck.
The duck, that's right. So that sounds like this. Right? All right, well, this next piece we're going to play talks about another animal. And I'm not going to tell you what it is. But let's see if you can guess.
think that you have seen all the instruments. We have one more piece for you to play. You've been an excellent audience. But if to anybody, it looks like some people have some questions. We can take those first. Yes, go ahead. Oh, that's okay. You'll remember.
So the last instrument that played is a mix of yours and his.
Very good. So the oboe, it kind of is because it's made the same and about same wood and about the same size. But she plays a double reed just like I do, exactly. And what's really interesting about all the woodwind instruments is how different they are, even though we're all in the same family. They all look different, we all play them very differently, and yet we're all in the same family. Yes?
I think it was a chicken.
It,
Because he was wearing chicken.
you're absolutely right. I think it was a chicken too. Very good. Did you hear the chicken scratching on the ground?
No.
No, you didn't hear that in the music? Yes, go ahead.
Do you ever get lightheaded whenever you
Whenever we play. Sure, sometimes that does happen.
Especially when we first start, when you're just a very beginner.
Right. You know, when being able to blow for long periods of time like that on the instrument, it's like learning how to run a mile. You know, you don't run a mile right away, you have to build up to it. And so the same thing for playing an instrument. Yes?
I just had another one, but then I lost it. At the end of the chicken trying to fly.
Maybe. That's not right. All right, so we are going to play one more song for you. Thank you so much for coming and hearing us play. This is going to be this is a triumphal march, a royal march of the King of the Forest, which of course is the lion. Thank you so much for joining us today. Jones for allowing us to have the concert here today. We did it here at CMS. Thank you so much for coming, all of you.
Thank you.